Hi, friends. I am so excited for today's episode. We have Naky G from the African Lisbon tour with us today. If you've listened to any previous episodes, you know I have been gushing about this tour since I went on it a few months ago. And Naky is just a freaking delight. He is the creator and the founder of this tour. He was born in Togo and was there for most of his life before he moved to Europe. He started in Spain, then he went to Germany, and then he ended up in Portugal. And when he was acclimating himself to his new home, he started asking a bunch of questions to get a sense of, like, what is this place all about? What's the history? What's it like to live here? What's it like to live here as a Black person? And he was met with a lot of silence and some resistance. And so he started asking more questions, whether those questions were to the history books or to other tour guides, to really understand how can we fill in the gaps of the silence and the resistance that I'm receiving. And so this episode, we talk a lot about what it is and how important it is to ask questions and embrace that curiosity as you're trying to piece together things that don't seem to make sense, to trust your intuition when something doesn't feel right instead of just doing what somebody else says. And really trusting the fact that, like, as human beings, we can handle really difficult things and really great things and everything in between at once. We are actually built with these incredible brains that have the ability to do that. So in this episode, we talk so much about the power of community as you do this, of collective healing. And I feel like if you're coming out of this episode not wanting to go to Lisbon, let's talk. I'll tell you more about how amazing it is. But I hope that you are called to examine the history that you know, whether it be about Lisbon or otherwise, whether it be about a country or about your family lineage or yourself, and really understand that there's a lot of things that so often when they don't get the light of day, they get lost or forgotten, that are really pivotal into us understanding how we are, where we are today. We are at a time where we are coming to a collective experience of understanding that we need to evolve to what is next, because where we're staying right now is a bit of a mess. And so if we give ourselves permission to explore and to uncover the things that have been in the shadows, we actually give ourselves more of a strong foundation and understanding to be then catapulting forward into a more inclusive future from. And the last thing I want to make sure I say is that Naky, this is his first podcast ever. He's been invited before, and I will tell you, before we were coming on, I was covered in chills from head to toe when he told me that he wanted to join this podcast. It making me very emotional. So I feel like even more important to say welcome to the incredible family that he creates in his experiences. Welcome to the family that I got to be a part of for the tour, amazing tour cousins that I was on the tour with back in May. Without further ado, and by the way, if any of you are listening, hey, I miss you. I wish we could be hanging out right now. But without further ado, here is Naky G and the incredible story of the African Lisbon tour. Naky, welcome to Checkbox Other. To say that I'm excited for you to be here. I've already been gushing before we started recording, but I am so amped. I'm so excited. So welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thanks to my greeting to all the audience of this podcast.
Yes. You guys, you're just so lucky to meet Naky right now. So Naky, the first thing that we do is I hand the microphone over and I have you tell a little bit about your journey. I always say the twists and the turns and maybe those moments that you were like, oh, that led you to where you are, that, have you doing such amazing work today. So I'd love to hear from you.
Well, okay, my journey. I have two lives. I have several lives. So yeah, I'm originally Togolese. Yeah, I was born and raised Togolese, and I lived most of my life in Togo, and I've been also traveling in some countries in Africa. And yeah, my life in Europe just started, like, I would say 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I left Togo and I came to Europe with my ex-partner, and then we started our journey in Spain, and from Spain we decided to go to Germany for some work and also for some studies.
Yeah.
And so we stayed in Germany, in Berlin, for a few years. And after that, we decided also to move and leave Germany for another country to have another experience. And so we end up coming to Portugal.
Nice.
Actually, that was the choice of my partner, not my choice, because
Mm,
I've never been to Portugal, and so she decided to come here, and I was like, okay, so I'll come with her. So I also end up being in this country for
yeah.
now 8 years and living here and making life. So that's my short journey.
I love it. I love it. And before, I mean, as you came to Portugal, were you doing tours before that? Were you doing anything in this world prior to coming to Portugal, or is that something that started when you got to Portugal? Where you're like, hold on, we need to start showcasing this space.
Yeah, I would say that when I was in my country, Togo, I really love tourism. I really, really love tourism, and it's one of the fields I always wanted to work in.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the opportunity in my country to work in tourism, and I even tried. Actually, I had a tour in Togo that is just based on nature. I was taking people sometimes to the landmark of my country, but it's
Mm,
not real stuff. So that was my first interest in tourism. But when I moved to Portugal, honestly, I have no idea. I was not coming here to be a tour guide. I was not coming here to create any tour
yeah.
because as an African, you move to Europe, and the first interest for you would be like working because you also have to take care of the family back to Africa. So
Yeah.
I was not planning to do any tour.
Yeah.
But when I end up here, yeah, I would say that like the circumstances like made me create this tool.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. Just like how I was motivated from what I experienced. It is why I create this tool that exists today.
I love that. It's like all the stars aligned at the time that they were supposed to be like, this is something you always wanted to do and you're very good at, but also people need this. Let's go. So I love that. So one of the first questions that I usually ask people is to share a time in their life where they have felt other or different or as though they don't belong. And so I'd love if you'd be willing to share a story or maybe two that or as many as you'd like, that is a time in your life where you have kind of grappled with that feeling of feeling other.
Mm. Well, that's that's a little bit hard to answer actually.
Yeah.
Like feeling others is something, it's something you need to develop in yourself first. You know, it's
Yeah.
like placing yourself on somebody's place. You need to develop it a lot,
Yeah.
and to have like kind of empathy, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would say that I always try actually to really feel like other people because
Mm,
it's easy to be judgmental,
yeah.
right? But it's not easy to feel what the person is feeling.
Yeah.
So it's something that I try to develop in my life, and the first thing I would say that I really developed and and I appreciate by myself for myself is that I have a good listening. So I like listening to people because it's the way for me like to learn, to
Yeah.
know the person and not to feel the person. Although I cannot feel 100%, it's
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your feeling is not my feeling. What you feel in a situation, a particular situation, I cannot be your, but I can understand somehow, but I cannot. So it's somehow difficult, really,
Yeah.
really, 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 really difficult. Um, yeah, it's difficult. You can try to feel someone, to feel
Yeah.
like others, but you may be wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You might make assumptions and and go down a lane and be like, oh, you didn't mean that. Let me go back. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
something, it's not easy at all. It's not easy at all. So, um, but yeah, I think for me, my solution in that case is just like to listen, and
Yeah.
sometimes just to step back and like meditate and not even talk because um, me, that's me. Yeah, I don't talk right? When I know that I cannot,
Yeah.
I can make clear my situation regarding what you feel.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny because I feel like you're in creating your business, this tour, this experience. I feel like business doesn't even cover what you're doing. You're like creating transformational experiences for people that is not just the people that are there, but generations behind as well, and generations forward. I mean, this is what we talk about, ripple effect in all directions. So when you were thinking about creating this tour, and really when you were talking about all those stars aligning or those elements coming together where you said, okay, I've got to do this. Can you talk a little bit about what things were happening at that time that made you feel like these stories aren't being heard? This experience isn't having a light shine on it. Can you talk a little bit about how that kind of came about and who has come to, who has come to hear the tour, be part of it? How has kind of your story of creating it attracted people to it?
Yeah, the beginning of the tour, it will be like, when I was creating the tour, I have no idea what it's going to be like 7 years after like today,
Yeah.
I have no clue. For me, I was doing it first because I want to learn. I want to know about the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first reason why I created a tour is just because I came here and I met white Portuguese, I met black Portuguese, Afro Portuguese. And when every time I tried to ask, when I was asking questions, I like to know about the country, the history. You as a black person, how is your history? How
Yeah.
you're feeling? I end up like going straight into a wall, like when people are not really open to talk.
Yeah.
And some Afro Portuguese will even tell me like, leave it. This is the past. And I'm like, really? Um, so this is a story that is, this is your story, right? It's a
Yeah.
story of your ancestors, and you want to leave it behind because some people want you to leave behind, and you will just accept it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I love history. I love to read. I love to search. I would say, discover. I love to know new things, right? And so I started like just making my own stuff. Like, okay, I may not count on people who are here
Yeah.
because maybe their narrative will be one thing, silence, or the second one will be the whitewash narrative.
Yeah.
So that would be better if you yourself you just learn from the country, right? So this is what I started doing. I didn't plan to create a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from all I was reading, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Because like even from my country, I don't know, I didn't have like this deep knowledge of Portugal, even the
Yeah.
deep knowledge of the transatlantic trade, for example, right?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, so I got all this information. I will try to put it together and then try to create something. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take tours in the city because I was seeing tour guides, and I'm going to take tours in the city. And I've even applied for to become a tour guide for some companies.
Yeah.
And then when I was going to the tours, I'm like, all the narratives are almost the same. And when I applied to with some companies, they were like, okay, yeah, you just follow the tour guide and you create your own tour. I'm like, okay. So I make like 3, 4 tours.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the narrative. This is a Portuguese history, right?
Yeah.
So it's a Portuguese narrative as well. And you have like narrative that need to be told, like the Portuguese, how the king were, well, or the marriage or whatever, a lot of stuff. Yes, that needs also to be told. But any question regarding like transatlantic trade, just like brushed and just like 1 second answer, and that's over. And this is why I end up creating a tool. And I created without believing that it's gonna take this kind of
Yeah.
language today, right?
Yeah.
And when people started at the beginning to book the tour, I was surprised. Um, I was surprised, and you asked me who.
Yeah.
Like those I have first were American always, and to the day I still have a lot of American.
Mm.
Yeah, American. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I don't have
Mm.
people from the country, but I have American. Let's do it. And I was taking those American, and the way the interaction was, and the way, the way those people were taking the tour, the comment they were doing, the question they were asking was always shaping the tour. So this is one of the things that I kept the most from the tour, and I was like, wow, okay. So I think it's something serious that I need to take it serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to take it seriously. And I'm like, okay, so I'll continue doing it. I'll continue dedicating my time to research more and do and provide more and more information to people, and also, of course, receiving from people because, you know, I'm also learning. You know,
Yeah.
I'm learning, and in 7 years, I learned a lot from people.
Yeah.
I'm not traveling. I'm not. I've never been to the U.S., but I know a lot from the U.S. You know.
You've got a lot of family members in the U.S. at this point. We'll all host you when you come. You know, Naky, one of the things that is so powerful in what you're saying that keeps coming through is the power of curiosity, of
Mhm.
you being like, let me ask questions about this place, and then realize when those doors are closing, whether they're literal doors or just everybody going, you know, like detaching from the conversation, or saying, oh yeah, this happened and then this happened, and you're like, what about the hundreds of years in between where we're not talking about? So I think that the kind of, I always think of like a little kid that asks a lot of questions, and you're always just like, I don't know, and they ask why, and they ask for more, and you're just like, okay. But there is something so powerful about curiosity. Curiosity is what moves us forward and has us understand why we're here, what we're doing, and the purpose of life, and why we interact with each other the way we do. And so there is just so much profound knowledge to
Mhm.
be discovered and to be uncovered by asking questions and allowing for curiosity to exist in spaces. I think a lot of times, especially in the last couple of years, we've been in uncertainty like most of us have never experienced, and we have to be willing to be in that questioning space of how are we going to do this and what are we going to do next. But when you have something that is kind of something that is a collective shame, oftentimes that becomes even more of a uncovered up response. So
Mhm.
when I feel uncomfortable, here are the things like you were saying, there's like a very specific, very short response some people might give you. But when you're like, can we go a little deeper? It's like everything says, nope, off limits, we're not doing that. And so the power of curiosity, I feel like is incredible in what you just said about your journey to creating this incredible experience for people, but also in how it continues to live and breathe and evolve. Because when people are coming and asking you questions and people are wondering about things, that just further adds to the beauty of what you're creating, the experience you're offering people, and what you're encouraging people to bring outside of that tour. So curiosity. Then I think the part that like makes me get like all like is that you became the historian that you needed in a way that then gave us all a historian we needed. And we haven't even been able to acknowledge that that's, again, forgotten history or erased history or undiscovered history. I know the word discovery. You talk a lot about, I've been using it so much. I'm like, yeah, the discoverers with air quotes. Sure. What did you discover? You just came and took something. That's not discovery, but how powerful it is to have a story that isn't just one of the one of the spots on the tour that you talk about is that kind of big statue of all the discoverers, and how that is the cornerstone of how the entire story of Portugal is told, when there were so many other people whose stories matter and need to be heard. And so your ability as a historian to pull the threads of those stories that haven't been completely cut and tie them together and say, oh, wait, this matches this timeline, was such a powerful thing. I think part of it is when you're saying I loved history and I love tourism and they come together. So I think there's a part of like Naky as the individual that's like, you were made for this. But also there is like such a just a larger offering gift that you're giving to so many of us as we grapple with our place in the world, the history, but then also when we think about our own stories, it's okay, here's what I'm being told by my family or being told by my surroundings. But there are a couple things that like you're talking about on those tours you were going to that was like, that didn't feel right. And so being able to say, that didn't feel right. Let me just look a little closer and see what stories come from there rather than just taking it as, oh, okay, that's how it goes. Doesn't feel right, but I'm going to trust you and not myself. And so there's so much power in you taking that role of historian and saying, I'm going to answer the unanswered questions and I'm going to trust that this is leading me in the direction that I need to go. And your questions and your stories will also shape that path that can be helpful for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. You said it all, like, curiosity is like, for me, something that is very important because it leads your path, actually. It really, really leads your path.
Yeah.
If you're not curious or you just accept everything, your path depends on somebody else.
Yeah.
Depend on the discourse that the person shaped. So you just walk in his path, not in your path.
Yeah.
And coming to Portugal, not only when I was in Spain too, I was questioning a lot of stuff. I was in Germany, and I tried to know how it is. Like I know how Germany was a colonizer of Togo, my country. I wanted to know about how they are dealing with history.
Yeah.
I was questioning all this, but yeah, I'm here in Portugal. I'm living here for years, and from the beginning, I was curious. This curiosity would be like, so many Black people are living in the city center of Lisbon. That was my first thing. I'm like, wow, there are a lot of Black people here. Their communities right here. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a blast in this city.
Yeah.
But yeah, and in the end, no, because those Black people are not represented.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not represented. So I need to be curious. I need to know. I need to learn. I need to know who you are. I need to know where you come from. I need to know your story. I need to know how you fit in Portugal, right? So, curiosity. We need it. We all need it. Definitely.
Well, and you open the door for so much more, I think, too. In your curiosity, it's contagious in a way that allows other people to open up and share stories. Because one of the things that I do facilitations and workshops, and I was a tour guide when I used to do in college. I was an orientation leader, and so I appreciate and understand the shoes that you walk as somebody that holds space to educate people on the move and all the different people that might come in, right? Mm-hmm. In that appreciation, the way that you hold space is different than any person that I've experienced because you are an educator. You are, but not an educator making you feel like believe what I say and don't believe yourself. It's a peer educator. What you've created is this network of people being able to share story and make discoveries, true discoveries for themselves, aha moments, light bulbs in their brain together in a space that's safe enough, but also not so safe that we don't talk about things. And so there's a beauty to creating those spaces. And yes, in something where we're talking about the history of a country that was a superpower in the time, in a lot of the civilization making elements that impact so much of what's around Portugal. It's important for us to understand if you had power, what were you doing with that power? How was it wielded? How has it impacted so many other countries and civilizations because of the decisions of a few people here? And so if we don't talk about it, how is it hitting the entire world? But then also when we look internally, how do we have so many Black people here that aren't feeling empowered to step into the full breadth of their history? And so can you talk a little bit about, one of my favorite, I'm feeling it in my body as I'm about to say this. One of my favorite moments on the tour was when you were talking about when we were in the commercial square and you were talking about this entire square was full of Black people. And just having that visualization in my brain, but also understanding that when we're told of history, it's not about Black people as people living their lives and being powerful and being culture makers and being the people that are resilient and creating so much. And as we're looking, you see the entire city of Lisbon from there, and you're like, without Black people, this would not exist. And so can you talk a little bit about how kind of talking about and amplifying that message has impacted you, but also impacted the people that come on that tour. You're talking about Americans, but it sounds like there are other non-Americans that are coming and having this experience too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you know, I have um I have like a goal doing this tour. You know, I have different goals, but one of the first goals that I have is just like to give a space to everyone. I want people to be part of the tour. I don't want to be seen as a tour guide who provide information like 1 or 2, 3, 4 hours and say, people, see you next time.
Yeah.
You know, I really want like to have a conversation with people. I don't I want people to be part of it. That's why you notice I took people in the tour.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I want to listen to you. I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear your voice as well. It's maybe the opposite of somebody else in the tour. You have a debate. You understand each other. I learn from you. You learn from me. I can know. I can disagree on what you say. You can disagree on what you say. But we will leave with a conversation that is done.
Yeah.
Things that we don't have the chance to do for a long time because nowhere. I mean, like it's very difficult today to go to a TV and talk about a transatlantic trade without being targeted like somebody who is an enemy of the country,
Yes.
you know? So how this is impacting my own personality, it's just because like, I'm really, really happy when I mean, every time I go, I'm out of my house and going to the tour. I'm excited to go there.
Yes.
I'm excited because I know I'm going to meet wonderful people, and this is always the case. I'm going to have very rich conversation with people, you know. So it's impacting me like positively, to
Yeah.
be honest. And I wish that everyone that comes to the tour is positively also impacted, you know. So yeah, like creating this kind of space, giving this image for people to see where they sit, the square where we start from, and imagine this square like as a black square where black people, enslaved people were working or were having their life back
Yes.
then. You know, it's something that puts us like in the kind of movie.
Yeah.
We are in the movie. We are in historical movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I show the images, you feel yourself in this movie. You feel yourself in the space from the 15th, 16th, or whatever century.
Yeah.
You know. So when you leave, and the next day, if you have the chance to walk through the same square, you have another view of the square
Yes.
because you project yourself in the past and feel like, okay, what I'm seeing today is the product of what was done in the past, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. That's the goal. One of the goals that I want people to really see Lisbon differently, not on the negative way. And you said it. I'm not putting people like in front of a trial, like, okay,
Right.
you do this, you know, you
Yeah.
come, you free to talk. You say what you. I have a situation where people do not agree with what people say. Do not
Yeah.
agree with what I say. But we all end up like, you know, understanding that okay, we came from different background, and some people have been shaped differently. They have
Yeah.
like different narrative. But at the end of the day, you know, we have a conversation.
Yeah.
And if you see me tomorrow, I won't be your enemy. You won't be my
Oh
enemy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, and it's so funny because I feel like the last couple of years, and really more like, at least in America, the last, if everybody seemed to have gotten on board in the last couple of years, right, of actually acknowledging a conversation needs to be had in a country that supposedly has touted freedom.
Yeah.
But it's what I feel like is so powerful about the space that you hold is that you're creating a space for conversations that people are so hungry for, but never have had the opportunity to talk about it, to practice, to be told it's okay. So all those reactions that you were being given up front, whether they were overtly saying, shut up, don't talk about it, or saying that in every other bodily reaction or non-reaction, that's the kind of stuff as human beings, we learn from the unsaid as much as we learn from the said. And
Yeah.
so I think you creating space to say, talk about it, let's go, it's okay. And I think one of the things that was so powerful, again, my sister probably is like, Naky, you have talked to me about this a million times. So Danielle, my sister, was on the tour with me. And afterwards, I was just talking about how it was amazing to listen to you share history without any, there was no angle, there was no, you were just sharing the information, and whether you had a personal opinion about it or not, it was only coming up if we asked you for it. And even then you were like, this is intended for you to be able to process this information. I feel like, especially about something that is so charged around just the lack of humanity that is a part of so much of our global history, to be able to hold space for the experiences, to live in that space for everybody to be able to process, whether they're comfortable speaking at first, is so important, to leave that room so that people are given the permission within themselves to process it and be like, okay, I'm going to try this. I've never actually said this before. And so being able to hold that space, and also just, again, I think it's part of, I'm going to call back to when you were talking about the listener that you are and the empathy that you have, because I feel like without that, this would not exist in the way that it does. And so I feel like there is so much to like uncover, but also to encourage people. And I think it creates, like you're talking about, I mean, I still talk to the people that were on the tour with me, and I've been on other tours before, and I don't talk to everybody from the tours I've been on. And so I think there is this semblance and sense of a family unit that you create when you create a space for vulnerability to exist, and for people to try things and maybe mess up and say the wrong thing or disagree, that so many of us don't have. Even in very different topics in our life, we don't have the freedom to do that. And so I think there is such a wonderful gift of just humanity that you're not only infusing by saying all of these people who've been erased from history, close your eyes, there they are, look at this picture, there they are, but also like you can tap into the humanity within yourself that has been told to be quiet. It's welcome here. And so I think there's so much power in kind of resurrecting and reactivating so much of that for every person that gets to be in this experience.
Yeah. So yeah, this is one of the goals. So I think you were on the tour, so you exactly describe the way it was and the way also people feel. And I think when it's also ends like with a dinner or with a meal, people are relaxed, and then they can come back again. I mean, I remind everything I was saying, and I share their own opinion, and it's all on a very relaxed way. So yeah,
It's beautiful.
I thank the ancestors for giving this, providing this space.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've watched before I came on the tour, a friend of mine, Kiana, who was a previous guest, and then Margot, who was also a previous guest on the podcast, they both were raving about this experience. And so I started following you on Instagram and seeing kind of the different experience that you've had. And not everybody has the Naky reaction to this. Not everyone's like, you've had people, as you mentioned earlier, being like, why are you doing this? Shh, we don't talk about this here. How have you handled kind of acknowledging and interacting with that while also holding the space for what is such a powerful experience?
Yeah, I think, I create this space for people who are open. If you are open, you come to the experience. If you are half open, you can come to the experience. If you are not open, I think it's going to be very hard for you. It's still open for you, but it's very difficult for you. You know? So how do I handle this? I'm aware. I'm aware that this is a topic that is not accepted in many countries, and especially in the countries where I am now, in Portugal. It's not accepted by many people.
Yeah.
Now I'm aware about that. But it's not a reason for me to be like, okay, since people don't like it, so I have to stop it. I have to do something else. I have to even reshape my discourse,
Yeah.
So I just handle it like normally, I take in account those people also, their reaction. I do consider their reaction.
Yeah.
And every time I try to check, like, okay, if there is something, what is the thing that is bothering actually, you know? But it doesn't mean that I have to change it.
Yeah.
So I handle this by providing an accurate and I mean, and information that is like I can prove.
Yeah. You have
Or-
evidence. Oh yeah.
And evidence. I
Oh
have
yeah.
evidence of what everything I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not scared of like anyone who is against what I'm saying. Everything I say is not written by me.
Right.
As I said at the beginning, I compile information from different books. So I'm not a writer. I'm not a historian. I provide information. I gather the information from different historians.
Yeah.
And to be like very clear, I gather information from Portuguese historian. So if any Portuguese or anybody else is not agreeing with what I'm saying, it's not about me. It's about
Right.
I'm just a vector, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just providing the information. But writers, people research more than me. Yeah, I'm just a canal. I'm providing this information. So I handle it like, okay, if somebody want to have a debate, that's okay. We can have a
Yeah.
debate. These are the sources. Bring your sources, and we have a debate. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not nothing. There is nothing. I mean, against anyone. It's nothing.
Yeah.
No, I'm not in this kind of mood. I'm in the mood where I'm open for any conversation, you know, and I have a sources. I have evidences of everything I said during
Yeah.
the tour from A to Z.
And not only do you have the evidence, you encourage people to see and touch and
Yeah.
feel the evidence throughout the tour. It's not just your voice in the tour. You have people throughout the tour speaking the words of kings and the words of, you know, I mean, I remember reading things that I was like, wait, I know that name. You know, there are parts of these elements that it's not just the 4 hours you're together. It's truly transporting you and seeing the words of other people. And so it really is like you said, it's like a movie. It really feels like you are becoming a part of this story. You're getting to see all those threads come together that you've, again, I'll call you a historian in my own way. I won't use the traditional one, but I think your ability, like, it's kind of like an archaeologist, or like you're uncovering things that existed. And I think that there's a level of pride that comes when you can, as somebody that's from a place or comes from people that have been from a place, to understand how things were and how things came to be. Yeah, there might be some shame in there for sure, but shame is something that we all deal with in some way in our lives. And there is also so much power in understanding how this beautiful city came to be, how this country came to be, how each and every one of us came to be here in this moment in time. And especially it's a country like Portugal that really has influenced so much of the world in history. And even, you know, there's so many people flocking to Portugal for a reason, that there is so much that it actually really helps bolster the understanding of Portugal and the resilience of its people, because even the people that came there and really not came there were stolen from lands and taken there, became the fabric of Portuguese history and Portuguese culture and the Portugal that you know today. And so, yes, there might be that feeling. And again, people that have that closed feeling of like, nope, I won't even talk about it. I won't even look at it. Yes, people will do that. But there is so much power in understanding history so that you can have a more firm foundation. And I feel like you're giving, even for people who are like, we don't talk about that, I don't know why he's doing that, give yourself the opportunity to like maybe put that armor down a second, because it's not an attack on you. It's not I mean, you said it's not an attack on Portugal at all. It made me, as an American tourist who is now talking about it on podcasts and with every person I know, be even more excited about Portugal, because when you have a country that has been formed and shaped and created by so much power and resilience, there's so much hope that comes from that. And so I feel like there is a piece, if you get stuck in the shame, then you don't allow the hope to exist. And so I feel like you're creating such a beacon for, all right, let's understand who we are, where we come from, so we can leverage all the strength that's within that. If we shut down parts of it, we lose a huge amount of opportunity that we have. And we also don't know how to handle difficult things if we just shut off from them. And difficult things will come as human beings. That's what happens in our lives. We deal with difficult things.
Exactly. I mean, like a story, the story of even human being, our stories are not just like positive stories.
Right.
We always have those negative parts, and we have to deal with these negative parts, right?
Yes.
So it's like it's the same like the story of a country. Like I will even say my country, for example,
Yeah.
for those who don't know Togo, Togo have been like still Togo for 38 years was a dictatorship. Yeah, we had a president for 38 years. He died in 2005. And in 2005, his son became president. Yeah, and his son is also a dictator, right? So when I was a kid, we were having books in the primary school, books where the presidents, I mean, like they're kind of a cartoon, right?
Yeah.
And the president in this book, he's always depicted as an hero,
The hero. Yep.
fighter. He was whatever the first Togolese, the first whatever, the first fighter, the first wrestler, the first military, the first football player, whatever. So we grew up knowing or thinking that this guy was no human. He was a god.
He's a god. Yep.
He's a god. And so how can I see this story today? Should I have to criticize this story because this was wrong. We've been educated to believe that this president was the best ever. Now we have his son on the power. He's perpetrating the same thing like his father. People say that his dictatorship is a little bit soft, kind of, because we're in another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to criticize my country.
Yes.
Because I don't like what is going on there. Our history has positive side. The country is a beautiful country. We have a negative polity. So I have to talk about it. So being in Portugal and talking about this, I mean, for some people, it's like, our lives are like a puzzle. Yeah. No one side. We made a good thing. People can talk about your good stuff. But if you make something wrong, people will talk about it. The country did something in the past that was not good, is a history, is a fact. We cannot erase it. We have to talk about it, right? Yeah. And then what is good also in the country, we appreciate it. We have to appreciate it. So we appreciate a good thing. Otherwise, we won't be here. I won't be here. Yeah. If I don't like Portugal, I won't be here, right? So I'm taking the good side of the country. I'm enjoying life here. I'm knowing about the country. I'm talking about what was wrong in the past. But if somebody feel like attacked in the 21st century, because I'm talking about a story of the 15th century to the 19th century, I think the person doesn't understand. That's it.
Yeah. It's so, it's so interesting as you're talking about Togo. And so my family's from Haiti. And the New York Times here just did I think it was 16-page spread about Haitian history. Again, there's a lot of Haitian history that was not included in that spread. But it was really interesting because as a kid that always knew my father immigrated to America from Haiti, my grandmother did, my uncle did, we didn't talk about our history. And so what filled the gap of the history I didn't know was the media in America about Haiti, which is insufficient and dehumanizing, to say the least. And and when I could get like, okay, dictator, and like, so it was very like what you're saying, it felt like when you were just talking about cartoons, it felt like a surreal story. Like there's not real people that are experiencing this because it's so distorted. And so by being able to put those puzzle pieces together and realize that you're not a god and you're not a villain, you're a human that does things that seem really godly at times and some things that seem really villainous at times, that the whole fabric of how we exist as people is from other people. It's not that that person is better or worse or more valuable of a person than you are. And I think that that's part of what probably is, a lot of that kind of resistance that people are having, that what in a lot of the coaching I do, I talk a lot about how education has made us obedient. And it's actually, at least American education, it's based on a system that was in Prussia, so Germany, Prussia, that was intended to make children obedient, to kind of not militarize, but it was very intentional. The way that the classrooms were set up and the instruction was set up was so that you never thought with your mind, you just thought with what was put in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so how that indicates how we interact as adults, because we just are so used to learning from a piece of paper, trusting that more than the way we feel inside or the questions that we have. And so by creating the space to reconnect with that wisdom, you're doing such a service to people, but also like, I feel like I understand the country that my family came from. The part, I mean, the DNA that I have would not exist if not for history that I am just scratching the surface of. And so I think there is a piece to this that, yes, there's resistance and yes, there's discomfort. And oftentimes it can feel really uncomfortable because we've literally been taught not to ask the questions and taught not to talk about the things and to not even acknowledge that the bad things happen, because we want a happy life, and a happy life only happens when you get rid of all the bad. But as a human being, that's not how we live our lives, and we know that. But we keep kind of that reel in our heads to keep ourselves striving. And so if you allow for all those pieces to exist and not necessarily be the end of the world or the best thing ever, but they can exist at the same time sometimes, it really gives you so much more permission to be the person that you are, to explore what you need to know and what you want to know, and be in relationship with other people that don't agree with you. I think that that's, again, something that unfortunately I feel like that skill set of knowing how to talk to people that you disagree with is like, has disappeared, because we only do it, via typing on a screen at this point, most of the people we interact with. So you never have to deal with the impact of your words, and you never have to actually try to heal something that's broken. And so I feel like there's so much, again, it's not everyone, I don't know if you've got this already. It's not just a tour. It's something that, like, what you're doing is creating a movement for people to be able to reactivate their humanity that has been stripped away through many different things. But it gives you so much permission to hold space in a way that we haven't necessarily been encouraged to do so.
Yeah.
So I have one question for you. Well, I've got a million questions for you. But one of the things that I walked away thinking was, so can we do this in other places? Have you had people ask you or talk about other locations where there's uncovered history? Either they're going to do it themselves, or you maybe be thinking about doing that, like, because I think what you're doing is truly the education that we need, that we haven't had. And we have so much access to information now, but that information is still gone through a very specific lens of, that's been erased and been amplified. And so I'd love to hear your thought about, if someone's like, I'd love that here, I'd love that there. How has that kind of come into your world, if it has at all, or what your thoughts about it?
I thought about like doing the same thing in some cities years ago, but I know how long it can take to be set up, right? Because I live in Spain, right? I live in Seville, and Seville is also a city that has a very, very strong history.
Yeah,
and that was the first choice. That was my first option besides Lisbon. I'm like, okay, I would love to do the same thing in Seville. And so I tried at the beginning, like that was pre-COVID. I would say like 4 years ago. So just trying to connect with some people that can provide some information, and then I can go there and try to look for the different spots.
Yeah.
But I can create that. I have people who ask me if I intend to do it in other cities. So Sevilla was the first one, and then I also thought about doing the same thing in Porto, in the north of Portugal. Fortunately now we have a sister, so who is doing in Porto.
Okay.
And so I'm really grateful because she wanted to do it. So we try to work together. So
nice.
Now we have a Black History tour also in Porto. So Lisbon, Sevilla was the first one beside Lisbon. But beside now Spain, I'm planning to do another one in Africa. So that's in the plan.
Okay, let us know.
In my country, because it's on the coast. It's part of the slave coast, and also Ghana, that I know very well as well. and also Benin. So that was a plan for me also pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started investigating already in those countries. So hopefully, let's see. I don't know how long, but yes.
I got my fingers crossed. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I just am like, you're welcome to every person that's going to have that experience. It's going to be an amazing thing. I feel like I came back to America after that experience and wished that we had that level of critical thought encouraged as we're learning things that are expansive and connecting with people. Because I think there's a part of you walking in with strangers that you don't carry the luggage and the baggage on your back of family members or coworkers or peers or like fellow students, that kind of thing. It's like, I don't actually really know you. And so there is that opening already. So I think there's something so, again, uniquely perfect about how when you're talking about the stars aligning to make this happen, that what your format that you've created, the experience you've created, the topics that you've created that are so important for where we are right now, that like, if we don't come together, we're going to all fall apart. Like, that's at least the work I do. I go into places and I was like, I'm not just saying be nice to each other. Here are the numbers. This will actually make it so our economy won't exist in the way we need it to. Like, I would like for us all to be nice to each other too. Yes. But like, it doesn't help our economy. You actually make more money. Like all of the arguments that are usually used to disconnect us, when you have been gathering information, it shows you the opposite. And so I feel like I always think of like, it's going to sound so silly, the Michael Jackson song, Heal the World. I remember that song as a kid and thinking it was like, yeah, why can't we heal the world and make it a better place for you and me and the entire human race? Like, why can't we do that? And I feel like that's what these experiences have, not even just the potential, but have the impact in doing as you're going through them. And so I am like big whole bodied yes for the expansion of these tours. And speaking it to existence. I hope there's some version or some experience that we can have here in America too, because I think it would be really, really helpful. And the other piece that I feel like, because you're humble, you don't talk to as much of how much, or maybe this is what you were saying about time, but we didn't say that, how much effort and time and energy it took to have all of this information when all of the forces of who have historic information are trying to tell you one story, that to build the information you have in the first place takes so much time and energy and effort and resilience to be like, okay, knocking on a door that won't open, but I know something's in there. Can I please? And so honoring the fact that it's not just, oh, let's do this tomorrow. It takes the build. And so if anybody's listening to this and has this information, knows this information, and wants to be a part of this, I feel like, Naky, they need to get to know you. I feel like you changed the world. So I am just like, woo, so excited. So the last thing, you talked to this already. The last thing I want to talk to real quick is how important, and I think you talked to this about the coming together over food. At the end of your tours, you create space for people to come together and celebrate joy. In the tour, I remember, I still have stuff from it, going to Rocio Square. Maybe I didn't say it right. And going into that grocery store that was a Black-owned grocery store and seeing the places that were, just Black-owned spaces that have me feeling like, yeah, I can be a part of the joy and the prosperity that is coming from this. It's not the story that we usually hear of, oh, okay, I gotta feel bad. It's here, there's growth, there's joy, there's stuff for us to celebrate as we're learning these really difficult things. It doesn't mean we have to get stuck in that. So can you talk a little bit about how you incorporate, not only, we went in the morning, everyone, so we didn't get to go out and like go dancing, but can you talk a little bit about how you've infused that element into this too? Because I think it's extremely powerful.
Yeah. I think without visiting Black businesses, it makes me feel like a little bit empty. Yeah, because Black people are depicted like to be those who always are in need of something, or maybe money or whatever it is. I mean, like we don't work, and we just need money from European governments. So, but in Rocio, you have a lot of Black businesses. So it's just to show to people that Black people here also, they are traveling a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are fighting for their life. They are doing the best they can do, and they are surviving.
Yeah.
So taking people there for me has like one of the most significant symbol for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's really powerful because Black people have no real background in Europe,
Mm.
especially when you move to Europe later. You don't have a real background, and you need to start a lot of things from scratch.
Yeah.
And when you start from scratch, you really need the support. Yeah.
Yes.
And throughout the time, we know how Black businesses fall because people, I don't know, maybe they don't manage well businesses or because of some situation related to the economy of the country or some laws in the country. So they lost their businesses. So once we have the opportunity to bring people to their businesses and to support those businesses, I can never go, around this. It's really, really, really important. And I know, and as you said, like going there, like, it makes you like being part of the city for a while. For a very short time, you just enter in a shop. Even the smell of the shop is
Yeah.
enough for you to remember. To think that you are outside. The smell from outside is different. You come inside, the
Yeah.
smell of the shop itself, just because of the product that are inside, you feel like in Africa. If you have never been in Africa, you feel like you kind of in Africa because of all the products,
Yeah.
right? So you travel for a second. You're outside Lisbon for a second. We are on a Black tour, we're on an African tour, and you feel like I'm somewhere in Africa
Mm-hmm.
because the people in the shop are Black. The product came from Africa. You can see okra, you can see pepper, you see palm oil, you can see anything you want. You're like, wow. And once you're out, we come back to the reality again, and then we try to share about the history. So yeah, it's something that I didn't incorporate on the tour from the beginning because it was a little bit tough. Like some people
Yeah.
didn't want to be photographed, they want to
Yeah.
be filmed, so it was difficult. But now, yeah, they're all open. They're all open for that. So yeah, uh, I think the tour without Black business would be good.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. 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 Well, let me say this. It would be good. It wouldn't be as great as it is. Yes.
Okay,
Because
thank you very
yeah.
much.
Yeah. 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 I'm like, hold on. Hold on.
So yeah, but yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't go a party, but it's part of it also.
Okay.
But
Next time.
just because, yeah, next time. But for those who, it was a try this year. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was not used to tour in the morning.
Yeah.
This year I give a try just to see how it is because I have a
Yeah.
lot of requests, and in summertime if I split it into two, morning and afternoon,
Yeah.
just to see how it works. But yeah, but for those who take like the afternoon tour, they know how it ends. So I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens there stays there is what I'm hearing. And maybe a little bit on Instagram, a little bit of
Oh
dancing
yeah, you have a
and
lot of
yeah.
Instagram, so other
Yeah,
parties
yeah,
are.
yeah. Well, I feel like if you've been listening to this episode and you haven't gone and checked out flights to Lisbon, if you don't live in Portugal already, or if you live in Portugal, you can take a flight to Lisbon too. And you haven't checked out the African Tour in Lisbon, you got to do it. So what do you? I mean, I found you through, again, friends, podcast guests, but also friends before, and the Airbnb experience. What ways do you think people should interact with you and get involved?
Yeah, I have my social medias, right? So I'm on Instagram, as you said, African Lisbon Tour on Instagram, and my website is also available. So that's africanlisbontour.com,
Mhm.
and on Facebook also African Lisbon Tour, and as you said, also on Airbnb. If you just Google like African Tour in Lisbon,
Yeah.
you have all the references. So you can just connect with me and send me messages. If you don't even plan to move to Lisbon or you don't even plan to travel, you just want to have some information. I'm also available to provide all those infos. I mean, in the at the level that I can. So
Yeah.
I don't know everything, but at the level that I can also I can also help people. And at the same time, I may take this opportunity to say that I'm also a real estate broker. So for people who know that, or any relocation or anything
Yes.
you can also contact me. And also now I'm throwing parties in Lisbon. So if you check my Instagram,
Check that. I was gonna say, check that Instagram. This looks fun.
check the Instagram, so you have all the parties
Yeah.
that were already thrown. So yeah, Afrobeat and Amapiano. I mean everything about Africa. So Afrobeat,
Yeah.
music, and yeah. Now this is also another part of the African Lisbon tour.
Heck
Yeah,
yeah.
so it will be the whole year. So you'll be all
I
welcome.
love this. Yeah. And for those of you that are like thinking, I don't know if anybody, again, I feel like most of our listeners are American. There are a lot of Americans that have been coming to Portugal, to Lisbon, relocating, visiting. So if you are somebody that's been like, oh yeah, I've been hearing about this, well, now you have an expert in the area that can help you if you're considering this stuff, if you have questions, if you know anybody there that's looking for people, Naky's your guy. Like easy stuff right there. If you can't feel this already, he's a delight to interact with. And I will make sure we'll include all the links of stuff you just talked about in our show notes for the episode too. So if someone's like, I don't want to Google it, we've got you. It's all there. So Naky, thank you so much for coming today. I feel like I'm back there hanging out with you for a second, so I'm amped about that. But truly, I can't wait to come back to Lisbon. And I mean, we spoke those other tours into existence. So, I mean, I can go on a little, I'll come to all of them. So I would love to. So thank you. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you very much, Nikki. It took a lot of time to set up this. Thank you for your patience.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
thank you for inviting me, and I really enjoy the whole interview, and I hope people will enjoy too.
Yes.
Yeah, so we keep in touch for everything. Yeah.
Of course. Did you book your flight to Lisbon yet? I'm like, not even kidding. I was sitting there being like, should I go back? Can I go back now? Naky is amazing. I hope that you got as much out of this as I got out of the conversation. And I hope that it feels like the start to a conversation, the start to a consideration of exploring your history, your country's history, but maybe your personal history. An invitation to go to Lisbon and actually embody and live in this experience that he creates, because it truly is transformative on so many levels. It's not just about Portuguese history. It actually teaches you a bunch of skills that are incredibly helpful for how you can interact with other people, how you can interact with yourself, and you can interact with the spaces and the places that you live in. If you have any questions, if you want to learn more, definitely hit us up. You can go to nikyinnocent.com/podcast and you click the join the conversation link there and let us know what you think. If you've got questions, if you follow on social media, I'm at Naky Innocent on all social media. Feel free to send us a direct message. This is a conversation that is so important and so pivotal. And I am just so grateful that Naky joined today. I will catch you all on the next episode. I'm so glad to be part of this family with you.